Let's just start off with Ghana as a stock market which is starting to grow quite significantly in various forms. We know that when you look at the trading hours, it's only from 10 o'clock in the morning until 1 o'clock in the afternoon. You've got platforms in place. You've also got potential new listings. Give us an indication of what is actually happening right now on your market.
Let me first of all start from the country Ghana itself, because that impacts greatly on the market. Ghana has been politically very stable. If you recall, Ghana in 2011 was about the fastest growing economy, where GDP growth was about 14%. We've had very stable macroeconomic environment, and that has impacted greatly on the stock market itself. For Ghana Stock Exchange, the market capitalization now is about 31 billion US dollars. We've had the index going up by 9% as we speak, which is quite significant. Last year, we had a very significant IPO in the name of Tullow Oil, which is one of the oil-producing companies, and we believe that will serve as a catalyst for other companies to come on board. We've had very interesting things happening. One, when you talk about new products, we are looking at how we can get exchange-traded funds on our market. Come next month, we're actually going to have one exchange-traded fund coming from South Africa on our market. We're also looking to develop the corporate bond market seriously, and of course the government bond market also. Yeah. So we have a team in place working seriously at it. In terms of the market features itself, we're trying to find ways of how to improve upon liquidity on our market. So as you said, we now trade from 10 o'clock to 3 o'clock, yeah, not 1 o'clock. We are introducing new features like margin trading, bullion landing, etc. on our market by end of this year. So generally speaking, we're going to have new products on the market. A few huge listings that might take place this year. And we are looking forward to improving liquidity also on the market.
Mr. Afedzie, if we could also just, you mentioned so many interesting points there, and I'd like to hone into Tullow Oil. You mentioned the listing. Of course, that was a very big listing that came through, because we know that the Ghanaian stock market is dominated by more local companies than multinational companies. This has been one of the big debates. How do we get multinational companies to want to list on local bourses? Liquidity being a very big issue. How do you plan to overcome this? Do you think the advent of new products is going to increase the activity?
That's why I believe Tullow Oil listing can be a catalyst. They've set example for others to come on board. So what we've been doing is we've been doing a lot of advocacy work, talking to policymakers, how to influence some of the multinationals on our market, for multinationals in Ghana to list. None of the telecom companies is listed, Vodafone, MTN, etc. We have just 2 mining companies listed. So it is true, we do have a lot more companies that we can get listed. Fortunately, when it comes to the banking sector, the governor of the Central Bank of Ghana is pushing very hard for all the banks to get listed. We have about 28 banks in Ghana, only about 8 of them are listed. And he's trying to push very hard for the others to list, and we are supporting him in that direction.
Mr. Afedzie, so we know that the Fidelity Bank, if I'm not mistaken, is about to be listed on the Ghanaian market, if I'm not mistaken?
Not so soon. They do have plans to list, and I believe in a year or 2 they will list, if not before that.
You mentioned some of the telecoms companies, and just spurring my interest there, it would be great to see a lot of those big names listing. Are you in negotiations with them currently? What is the sentiment towards embarking on this new strategy for them?
We have not engaged them to the level where they've committed themselves yet, but some of them have indicated their intention of doing that with time. So we'll be approaching them gradually on that. It is their business decision, but at the same time, they're operating in a country where we also need to see that the country also develops its capital market and also generates some wealth for its citizens. So we will be approaching them gradually on that front.
You mentioned the new products and of course an ETF. We've seen something similar in Nigeria where we saw the new gold ETF listed. Although it is a good product to start out with, you find a lot of the brokers there not really understanding a lot of the new products that have come online. There's a bit of reticence with regards to what we could see from pension fund activity perspective. How do you plan to overcome these challenges, potential challenges in Ghana?
That is why we're going to do ours slightly differently. We're going to embark on serious public education and also educate the brokers before we launch the new gold ETF. And also that might also lead to other ETFs coming. Already we did educate the brokers on what ETFs are and the kind of liquidity that I can bring to the market. So we will embark on a very massive educational program before we list the ETFs. And of course, it comes with a market maker, so that makes it easier. Yeah. And I think the investors in Ghana are patiently waiting for the ETFs to come on board.
With regards, is there still a withholding tax on dividend income? I think sitting at around 8% or so. And if so, I mean, right. is this obviously quite a negative scenario that could be playing out? A lot of African countries don't have this.
That's true, but we do have no tax on capital gains, and we have always been advocating for dividend tax being taken off. But you know how governments also run their economies. Yeah. Sometimes they need revenue also. Mm-hmm. So it's a balancing act that they have to take, and we believe gradually the policymakers will begin to understand the fact that if we want to develop our market and encourage investors to invest in equities especially, then we need to look at that particular tax.
If we could also just touch on regional integration, and we know that the Africa board for the JSE basically scrapped. We haven't really seen a lot of appetite. What is the sort of the outcome? I know that you've all been in discussions, various heads of stock exchanges throughout the week. What is the general sentiment in getting involved, particularly with the JSE?
I think African markets are looking at it from a slightly different angle. They are looking at it from the regional basis. So when you look at East Africa, they've begun some work on integration, and I think it's going to work out for them. When you take West Africa, we actually signed an MOU between Ghana Stock Exchange, Nigerian Stock Exchange, and the BRVM December 2009, but we had to hold on because of what was happening to some of the markets. And I was just speaking to the Nigerian Stock Exchange Chief Executive today. We are going to revive it. And we believe that we can have an approach which will make it easier. And we are taking an approach where we allow our market operators to operate in all the three jurisdictions, sitting back in their home countries and trading across and settling in their various jurisdictions. So we'll be using what we call the common passport approach. And I think come end of this year, I would have made serious moves in terms of bringing our markets together.